Okay. Yes. So the question, I'll paraphrase. So one of my understandings is that the the role of doer, that identity, can be said to be one of the last tethers to the ego. And I notice here that there has been, in this lifetime alone, decades-long habit of attending mentally and physically to so many tasks every day. And even though I try to just be in the flow and not give energy to the thoughts about what there is to do and hurry up, etc., I find there's almost a compulsion, Ananta, to just be doing, and putting so much mental energy on the daily tasks that the concern is that I'm becoming increasingly entrenched in this doership. And there is a fear that if the mind says, if you drop the identification with the doer, then nothing will get done. And my counseling clients, I will not show up for the appointments. You know, it makes it very extreme. But I'm very much detail oriented. I think this personal expression is very meticulous. And also the work that I do is such that I am on the clock, you could say, with all of these appointments for decades doing that. So I'm wondering how to really break out of this role of doer and just trust and move through the day in a flow and not have this angst around lack of time, lack of energy, missing something important that I need to do.
So the question I would ask yourself is, who wants to decrease the doership?
The person, the spiritual seeker.
So the seeker is also the ego, isn't it? So,
Yes.
so the ego wants to find a way to decrease or control the ego. Do you see how it just strengthens itself?
Yes.
It doesn't allow for a release because one is holding on and trying to get the ego in line with your concepts of what that means. So you see what's happening is basically the ego is feeding the ego in a spiritual way. But it doesn't help, you see. So
I see.
The ego is very good for knowing the ego, but not much more than that. The misconception that you have is that the illusion, that which you think you are, can get to the truth, that which you truly are. The ego won't be able to make that journey. What happens, in fact, this ultimate state, this place that you desire, that you want, only happens when the ego is diminished. You're trying to make it happen does not diminish the ego, it actually strengthens it. So you want to just let the ego recognize the ego. So instead of fooling yourself, like you're going to get there, like you can get there, you won't get there. When you are diminished, there is what will be left. But it's not going to diminish if you're fighting. if you're resisting, if you're trying to make it go away. The thing about making something go away is that as long as you want it to go away, it's always there.
Yes.
So instead of doing this path, which is very stressful, and pushing and pushing and pushing, and trying to make progress on the spiritual path, just relax into it and recognize the ego as the ego. There's the ego doing its thing. Oh, the ego thinks it can get there. Now that's a joke. How does an illusion get to reality? I don't think it will. So just watch it and be at peace with it as it is. When you judge yourself, what you do is you hold everything in place. You lock it in solid. So instead of that, when you watch yourself, judging yourself, recognize it for what it is. The ego is just holding its position. So just watch it do that. Watch the ego try and fool you into thinking that it's something else, that it's going to get there. You see? So you have this internal sincerity on your path. But you want that sincerity not to be misdirected. You see? So recognize when you're trying to get somewhere that that's not really where you want to go. Just let everything be as it is and see it as it is. Don't let the ego fool you into believing that you can get there. You can't get there because it already is there without any effort on your part. So I would say just recognize when you're putting your effort into it that there might be an easier path just to see what is. So see the illusion as an illusion. See the effort as something that the ego is doing, but it's not going to go anywhere. You know, there is a process of cleaning up the ego enough that it can release, but that happens on its own as well. And it will happen far easier if your primary position is simply seeing what is. So simply seeing the ego as the ego and not fooling yourself into thinking that you're getting somewhere or that you can get rid of the ego, because only the ego would try and get rid of the ego. You know, all of the enlightened beings that I've ever known have had very strong personalities. They had things that they liked, things that they didn't like, ways that they behaved. You know, so like Ramesh's guru, Nisargadatta, was known for his temper. He wasn't hung up on trying to be an enlightened, loving being all of the time. He, he would he would have you come, and there were so many people that wanted to come into this tiny space. So he had the luxury of kicking people out, make room. So you would come maybe, you know, for a week, and he'd go, so you've been listening to these talks? What do you think I'm saying? And if you said something that really demonstrated that you didn't understand what he was talking about, then he would just go, you know, where did you come from? Yes, this is a very nice place. I think you should go back because you're wasting your time here. And he didn't say it as kindly as I did. So this is, you know, the idea that, you know, the ego thinks it has to get itself into alignment with being a particular way, with, you know, saying particular things, doing particular actions. you will do the things that is your nature to do. If you're meticulous, if you're a detail person, it's not going to change. It'll just be the way it is. You don't have to worry about this. And I can tell you from my experience that all of this stuff that you're doing can go on without your doing it. It just happens. The you're just used to thinking you're doing it. That's a habit. Okay? But you didn't do anything ever. All of this was just a dream. It never even happened. You haven't done anything. Now, you believe you've done things, and from that belief, you get guilt and pride and all kinds of garbage. So I'm recommending that you simply watch, just be with the ego as it is, and don't indulge. So when you see something as it is, you see, oh, this is just the ego trying to get rid of the ego. Usually the thing just poofs. It stops because it got caught. The ego doesn't like, if the ego gets seen the way it is, it stops misbehaving so much. You see? But if you start buying into the ego's games, then it's got an audience and it's working. And so it continues to perform. So simply watch what is going on. Be with what is going on. There's no way you're going to get rid of the ego, because only the ego would be interested in doing such a thing. So all it does is strengthen it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I see. No wonder it seems as though as the years go by, it becomes a more, I use the word entrenched pattern, because the ego is trying to pacify, purify the ego and get the ego out of the way so that I can just be and let the life kind of unfold and take care of itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
This will happen on its own. And if it was something you could do, it would not be what I'm talking about. Okay, this is when it happens, you'll realize that it was always there. That it was just that you didn't recognize it. You see, they call it realization, like you realize something that was always there. It's always there. So it's a very small, it's not even a step. It's just recognizing that which you are seeking is already there. Now, the seeking itself is a drive. It's a rare drive, spiritual seeking. And that's fine, but just don't fool yourself into believing that you can get there. Just watch how the ego behaves. Get to know the ego really well, because the ego can know the ego. And when you start recognizing it, more and more it poofs, 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 poofs. When the ego fools you, it strengthens. So just, and then, it's stressful and a difficult life being a seeker, right? So, there's all kinds of different paths where you suffer. You suffer and you suffer and you suffer and you suffer. You suffer until finally you give up, you see? And when you give up, then the ego's diminished and you recognize what was always there. But, it doesn't have to be that difficult. You can just recognize the ego doing the ego's thing and never be fooled. Don't let the ego fool you into believing that it's something, because it's nothing.
Thank you. May I ask a related question?
Of course.
Too, please, Ananta? It has to do with this this over attentiveness to time. And I've listened to some of your other satsangs, and you speak about, I think, time as illusion. It's a mental construct, and yet I have been finding it difficult to navigate day to day this idea of time, because it feels like a lot of my life is ruled, quote unquote, ruled by time, in terms of when I have to be somewhere and how long to do this and that. And so there's a consciousness of that I know is connected with the personal identity, because when I'm really abiding in the heart, in the self, I do not have that fear. I do not have that concern, but I find it has been challenging to step out of that, and to feel like time is irrelevant, just about irrelevant.
Well, you understand, being in a body is being subject to time. There's a beginning, a middle,
I know.
and an end. And so all of this, your heartbeat, your breathing, all of it only exists within the realm of time, because it's movement, you see. It's all based in movement. And time is a form of movement, you see. So just that's just the way it is to be human in a body, and dealing with the movement as it goes on. Now, you navigate it as you navigate it, and sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's difficult. But did that answer it at all?
I think so. I guess I wonder too, from your experience. I mean, maybe the difference is pe people who are or those who are living from the true place, from the self, are aware of what is, say, to be done in a day, but they don't carry the angst. The angst is coming from the ego. What if I'm late? What if I don't have enough time? It's just, it's seen here as a very strong habit that has been fed and continues to be fed, which creates sadness and frustration here, that this pattern persists, because many things by grace have dropped, Ananta, but this pattern, it almost feels like it's been amping up. It's worse. We could say it's observed to be worse than even a few years ago. And maybe it's because it is play of ego. It is an area where I am hooked. My attention goes there regularly.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can just watch how it works. Watch how it works in your life. Now, I'm pretty much oblivious to time. I'm no good at it at all. I'm no good at figuring out what I did when, how many years ago this was. I'm not very good at it at all. But that was even before the Enlightenment. Now I'm hopeless. I mean, I write things down. So I manage to get where I'm supposed to be, and I manage my time. I do all right. I function, but I don't worry about it anymore. And you just notice when you worry about it, what's going on with the ego, what's going on with the mind. What is this? What function is this serving for you? You see, so this would be particular to your psychology. Um, the, the the thing about it is, it's the time it's just a movement, and it's perceived differently at different times and different people. I always hear people as they get older saying, time is going so fast. And I remember in elementary school looking at that second hand on the clock, and that thing moves so slow. So you see, it's just a perception. And the ego and the functioning of the body creates this appearance of movement. And then you have to go through your loops to do the things you need to do within that movement. And you can just look at the stress that it causes you. And the truth of the matter is that you will do what you do. You will never do more than what you do. You will never do less than what you do. And that's just the way it is. And some days you'll get a lot done. And some days you'll get almost nothing done. And that's just the way it is. I'm sure a good astrologer could point to the stars in your chart and say, yeah, well, of course, because of this. You had this pressure on that, whatever. You know, it's just recognize that it's like that. Okay. I have days I can't get anything done. And then I have days that just make up for those other days.
Yes.
I get a ton done. So, but that's just the way it is. So if you can simply approach it like that, and the angst that you feel, all that does is it feeds this notion of you doing stuff. You see? And also when you get a lot done, you feel good about it. That feeds it. So it's just things just happen. Things just happen. You can just watch it and realize that, 50 years from now, you won't remember any of it. So it's not important. It doesn't mean anything. It's just the way life is. Sometimes things go smoothly. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you get done what you expected. Sometimes you don't. Just take it as it comes instead of judging. You see, the thing about the ego is it wants to take things and it evaluates them, positive, negative. And all that does is strengthen the ego. Everything is the way it is. And positive, negative is irrelevant to it. It's just the way it is. But positive and negative gives you these feelings. The feeling of angst, the feeling of accomplishment, they're really all the same. And all of them just simply solidify and strengthen the ego. So if you can see the ego playing its game, doing its thing, and recognize it as the ego, you see, not judge it, because the ego is going to do its thing. That's its job. Its job is to keep you safe, keep the body safe, so that the survival continues. And but you see now the ego's taken on a lot more, and it becomes less apparent that that's all it needs to do. So simply watch and be with whatever. And when you notice the judgments arise, that feeling of angst, you see, or the feeling of pride, when you notice these things arising, just relax and recognize it as it is. And instead of getting involved, you see, the feeling of angst can only happen if you have involvement with thought. Involvement. So there was something happened and it didn't work out the way you wanted. And now you have this, and now you have that. And the mind is going, this is no good. I don't like this. I wanted to get this done and all that. You see, those thoughts all had to be pursued. That required pursuit of thought. So that's the involvement in the dream, believing it's real. You see? None of that needs to go on. The simple thought, the simple like, oh, I thought I'd get more done today. And then that's it. Not, you know, or I thought this didn't work out well. And then that's it. You see? No need to pursue it any further. And when you do, you get into trouble. Hmm. Did that help at all?
Oh, yes, very much so. Thank you. Yes, what I'm hearing too is as you speak, I can see the challenge here, the persistence of the ego has been there's a resistance to life, just being what it is, and because of this evaluation habit of the ego, even to look at the day, there's a lot of judgment will come, and it's been pursued about, oh, this is valuable, these activities are valuable on the spiritual path, these are not, these are a waste of your time. And so it creates, a lot of internal struggle. And I wondered too, Ananta, because of this strong habit of following these thoughts, there's a reaction, there's an associated reaction in the body. So, for example, if I have many things to do in a day, and then the mind is saying, there's too much to do, there's not enough time, and I begin to pursue, or even the thoughts come, the body registers the tension. So if the body is experiencing some anxious sensation, um, I guess I can just observe the body, continue not to pursue the thoughts, and eventually will the body begin to settle down, and it'll drop that habit of becoming very tense the moment that these thoughts about how much there is to do begin.
That physical reaction is a result of pursuit of thought. So if the pursuit of thought is diminished, the physical reaction will be diminished. The thing about it is that you can't do it really, but you can recognize it for what it is. So you can go, oh, look, pursuit of thought, there it is. And when you see it, it on its own, it diminishes. When you when you just ignore it and get involved in it, the pursuit of thought, without even noticing that that's what you're doing, it just continues and it strengthens. And then you have more obvious reactions to it, physical, emotional, like that. So the trick here is to be observant, is just to simply witness and see what it is, not to get rid of it. If there's involvement, just see that it's involvement. See that how it works. Oh, I started thinking about this and I got involved. Boy, that's a habit. Look at that. And look how that works. And as you do this, it gradually diminishes, you see, on its own. Not that you make it diminish. You don't get rid of the involvement. You simply witness it. You simply watch it and watch how it works and actually do it consciously, like watch the involvement and then the reaction and then the angst and the physical feelings and the emotions, etc. Just watch how it works.
Okay.
You see, and it will diminish on its own because you have a certain sincerity to your seeking. So because of that, and by virtue of that sincerity, when you notice stuff that isn't in alignment with the truth, it just starts to fade. It'll diminish on its own. But if you judge it, if you try and make it go away, that's just the ego. And that's the ego feeding the ego. Don't try and make it do anything.
Yes.
Just try and see it as it is. Just let the ego see the ego doing its thing and recognize what it's doing, when it's doing it, and it won't have anyone to perform for. There won't be an audience anymore. No one's buying it. You see? An actor goes on stage in a play, and it works as long as the audience is buying the idea that their character is real. You see? But if everyone in the audience just sat there and went, this guy's just acting, this isn't real. What am I doing here? Oh, it's no good. The actor has to quit. There's no audience.
That's a great analogy.
So, so don't you see, you don't want to be the audience for the one who's pretending to be you.
Yes, it's been quite a show. It's really been engrossing, but I'm tired of that. So I hear this is really valuable to. I guess I wonder then, do you recommend, because I listen a lot to Muji as well, and he'll say take 15 minutes, take 30 minutes every day, and sit and do what you're saying to do. So very concentrated attention, watching this inner show, but not getting involved, and then moving through the day doing the very same thing. So I don't know if you recommend having a focused practice of that, formal practice, in addition to just going about the day and watching these habits of the ego as they pop up.
I recommend doing any practice that helps you with your awareness of what is. Okay, so it's different for everybody. So I don't give out prescriptions very much. But if this practice with Muji works for you, if it helps, by all means. You see, I like to write, and I would write down stuff, and that seemed to work for me. That was that and just hanging out with enlightened beings were my main practices, writing and hanging out with enlightened beings, because when I hung out with them, I kind of caught some of what they had. It was like in that space, I could feel what that unconditional love and acceptance, what that was. I could feel it in that presence. I could recognize it so that it was easier to approach myself that way because I had that example. So,
Yes, that's how I feel in your presence.
it works. I would take advantage of it when you can. This is those were my main practices. Now I tried everything else. I tried meditation, I tried chanting, I tried this, I tried that. Nothing really helped that much. And I wasn't able to do the other things consistently enough, like for years. I could do them for months here and there. And meditation too, but that came on kind of on its own later, toward the end. And but really, you see, just knowing that space of unconditional love, knowing what that is, feeling it and being with it, then you recognize it and you know the difference between that and the ego. You see? Because the ego would love to be that, right? But there's a difference because the ego is always conditional. Unconditional love is not conditional.
No, not at all. Not at all. May I ask you one more question
Of
related,
course.
please? Thank you. Um, is it indicated on the spiritual path to try to simplify the life, though, in such a way that there is more time and space simply to be or to engage in sadhana, if that's part of one's kind of spiritual leaning? I've simplified my daily life to a good degree already. But there's a wondering about that, or to what degree do we just let life, as you say, be as it is? And so if it's incredibly dynamic and appears very, very busy with things of the world, we leave it like that.
Yeah. I I don't, you will have to see what is appropriate for you. But I can tell you, in the ashram, we were busier than hell. We were always doing stuff, and it was overwhelming, overwhelming work, like 20 hours during advanced crew trying to get everything ready for where Baba was going to be next. There were 20-hour days every day until Baba got there. No one had time for sleep. You know, now this was a good tool because the parts of the ego that you try and suppress, you're not going to suppress them in that kind of environment. No, they're going to come out. So everyone's in the same boat, though. And so what happens is everyone just starts laughing at each other. And so there's different schools. So I wouldn't be attached to it. Now I got my life down to some simplicity because I was always self-employed, and I was able to work out of my home. So that made it much simpler. Now I used to have to do the trade shows um, to bring in more business, but I had to give that up. That got too much. But then I got a friend to do the trade shows, and she's now my wife. So that all worked out. And things just tend to work themselves into the appropriate situation. May not be what you think is appropriate, but it works, you see. You just have to see what works. And what's needed sometimes is too much to do. And other times is for things to mellow out a bit. And you just have to trust that things are going according to God's plan for you. And I can tell you that the depth of understanding can easily happen when you're just overwhelmed all the time.
Okay. Oh, that's very reassuring.
Yeah, so
That's very, very reassuring. Yeah, there's no need to indulge in any kind of renunciation energy,
unless
because
there
you
is,
get what you need on the path.
un,
That's
un-
true.
unless there is a place for renunciation, but that
Mhm.
wasn't the path that I followed, but it was certainly the path that, like, Baba was a renunciate, you see, and he was a swami. He took vows. He didn't handle money. He was celibate. I mean, so that wasn't for me. But it wasn't necessary in my case. It was necessary in his case. So yeah.
I see. How do you know when the inclination to, say, simplify the life, devote more time to seva, sadhana. How do you know if that's coming from the ego or if that is really coming from the self? I sometimes have difficulty teasing out, is the desire a pure desire or is it mixed with this personal energy?
I think desire is always mixed with personal energy. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a desire. You see,
Mm.
someone wants something, isn't it? So um, the only advice that I would offer in terms of direction is to simply follow the things that feel like they're just pure from the heart, and the things from the mind. Um, you know, do not pursue them as much as you might. Just let things be. No, I think I said this last talk, but when I was deciding whether I wanted to be in the ashram full time, I had some doubts because I had a career path and everything. And I heard a voice and it said, go with the love in your heart, not the fear in your mind. And I would use that as the thing that guides you. What is it that your heart is telling you to do? And what is it that your mind is telling you to do? You see, because the mind won't get you home. The heart is home. So it's hard to distinguish because it's only the mind that wants to distinguish. The more that you can just love yourself as you are, in your actions, in your involvement, in your angst, in your joy, in all of it, the more that you can just love it as it is, the closer to home you are.
I totally agree. Yes. Thank you so very much, Ananta.
Oh, you're welcome, of course. Of course. I'm so glad you
I'm very grateful to you.
inquired about this. But then,
Thank you for your time.
of
Thank
course.
you for your wisdom. And thank you for the love you share with all.
I'm so glad you inquired. Sagarnath, Maharaj ki jai.
Maharaj ki jai. Namaste. Take care. Much love to you.